Welcome everyone to the Wednesday edition of our Packers News live chat. Alongside Tom Silverstein, I am Olivia Reiner. The Packers hit the practice field for the second time this week, gearing up for their game against the Jacksonville Jaguars on Sunday. We'll bring you the latest on how some of the health issues that the Packers are having may have an impact on this weekend's game. Plus, we'll also take a pulse of the NFC right now. Before we get into that, as always, you can be a part of our conversation. If you're over on Facebook, Periscope, or YouTube, leave us a question down in the chat. Tom and I want to hear from you. We'll get to some of your questions toward the end of our conversation today. I am not going to sugarcoat this. The Jacksonville Jaguars are bad. They have the 31st ranked defense, the 26th ranked offense. They're 1-7. However, the defense is good at one thing. They're good at getting after the quarterback. They're 5th in the league in quarterback knockdowns. The protection around quarterback Aaron Rodgers this weekend is going to be critical to the Packers' success. Left tackle David Bakhtiari has missed the last 3 games with a chest injury. How important is it that the offensive line is back to full health this weekend?
Well, they've been performing pretty well without Bakhtiari, which is a testament to the guys who have been left. But now that Rick Wagner's got a bad knee, their luck is starting to run out a little bit, and they need Bakhtiari back. And it sounds like he'll probably be back this week. He was a full participant in practice Wednesday. And if he's a full participant Thursday in pads, I would expect that he would start. So that'll help tremendously. The Jaguars do have a nice pass rush. They're a 4-man front, and the Packers see a lot of 3-4. So this is a little bit different for them. But they're gonna have to be at their best. I think Jacksonville has nothing to lose, and they could wind up sending the blitz. They could do all kinds of things. But if the Packers line is healthy, it's usually pretty good.
The Jaguars offense, again, 26th in the league. However, they do have a deep threat talent in wide receiver DJ Chark. This past weekend against the Houston Texans, he had a 73-yard touchdown reception, and that's not a fluke. He is 7 of 15 when targeted on deep passes. We don't exactly know what the cornerback situation is going to be on this upcoming weekend with Kevin King, Jair Alexander. They are both dealing with some injuries. King has been sidelined for the last 4 games with a quad injury, and Alexander has been dealing with a concussion since this past week against the San Francisco 49ers. How important is it that the defensive backfield is also up to full health this upcoming Sunday?
Yeah, it is. Chark can really fly. He's probably even faster than Richie James, who ran through the Packers secondary a couple times against San Francisco. So, yeah, that's a guy that they're going to have a matchup problem with if Jair Alexander can't play. And the fact that he really wasn't around today at practice is not a good sign, because the protocol is for them to be out at practice doing some stuff, then coming in and getting some work in practice, and then being cleared. So I don't know if he's going to make it this week. Kevin King is still limited in practice, so I don't know if he's going to make it. I would think that they're aiming to get him back this week. So, they still have Chan and Sullivan, and they can play some zone, and they can double cover Chark if they absolutely have to. I just think you'll see them play their defense and just probably keep the safeties back and not let anybody get behind them.
When we have updates on Alexander and King, we will share them with you. Let's take a little vibe check of the NFC right now, just to see how the teams are doing halfway through the season. The Saints, the Seahawks, the Packers, and the Bucks, those 4 teams are the clear frontrunners. Each of them have 6 wins. However, these teams have handed each other some really interesting losses. The Packers beat the Saints 37-30, not super interesting or controversial. However, then the Bucks embarrassed the Packers 38-10. And then just the other night on Sunday, the Saints completely humiliated the Bucks 38-3. Who has the upper hand in the NFC right now?
Well, what it seems to me, I thought Tampa Bay was going to be in this thing, and they probably still are. I think they probably just had a bad day defensively, just like Packers had a bad day offensively against them. But New Orleans is a tough matchup for them because they're a quick passing game. They have a quick passing game, and the rush didn't matter. Bottom line is, I think the NFC is a division or a conference of really good offensive teams. There's not really a great defense. Tampa's close, but their secondary isn't dominant. So you've got Seattle, who can score it well. Green Bay has shown it can score it well. Now New Orleans has Michael Thomas back. They can score it well. Arizona is a team that's really scoring a lot. So I think it's going to be whoever can put up the most points, in shootouts. And that might determine who takes this thing.
The Packers' identity through 8 games is crystal clear. When they're scoring, they are playing pretty well. They're 6-0 right now when they're scoring more than 30 points, and they're 0-2 when they're not. The offense is absolutely carrying this team. This defense hasn't been contributing to wins or anything, really. They don't have any game-saving stops, and they've only had 6 turnovers all season. Right. How much does the defense need to step up and contribute more to this team in order for them to go far in the postseason?
Well, it does. It needs more turnovers. I just, I'm tired of saying it. After 8 weeks, it's pretty much you get to the point where you're like, okay, this is who they are. They're just not going to be a great defense. They don't have big time playmakers other than Zadarius Smith. And so that we just have to get used to maybe that being who they are. And maybe they could be more consistent in terms of just not giving up touchdowns, get a stop here, a stop there, force a field goal instead of a touchdown. And that'll probably be enough with the way the Packers offense is going. And the Packers offense is getting healthy now. And so, it's got a chance to be even better if they can, put it all together. So I don't know. I just don't know if the defense can give them any more than it is. I just have kind of, I've just sort of felt like, well, this is who they are.
I'll flip that question over to you, Packers fans. How do you feel about the state of the defense? Is there more in their tank? Can they give more this season? If you have a thought, feel free to leave it down in the chat. Tom and I are going to start addressing some of your questions right now. Let's start with Andrew over on Facebook. Andrew asks, will wide receiver Allen Lazard be on a snap count if he is back this week? Wide receiver Allen Lazard and inside linebacker Christian Kirksey have been practicing for the last couple of weeks as they're still on injured reserve. The Packers have about another week until they need to decide whether or not to activate them to the active 53. So they don't have to be active this weekend against the Jacksonville Jaguars. However, if the Packers do decide to activate Lazard, how likely is it that he's on a snap count?
I would say it's probably pretty likely. I don't think they want to overdo it with him, especially you're talking about a guy who's had surgery 5 weeks ago, something like that. I don't think you want to overdo it. So, I mean, if he's cleared to play, he's cleared to play. That I don't see how, he could not be ready if he's cleared. But on the other hand, he's not in football shape. He hasn't played a game. He hasn't had real contact. So, yes, I think he will be on a snap count when he comes back.
Speaking of Lazard, let's go over to our German friend, Marcel. Marcel, it's so lovely to see you. Marcel asks, how likely is it that wide receiver Equanimeous St. Brown gets some more opportunities with Allen Lazard most likely coming back? I'll ask you this, Tom, exclusive of Lazard, whether or not he comes back. Equanimeous St. Brown has been back now for 4 games after he was on IR to start the season. He's only been targeted in this offense like 5 times. What is going on with St. Brown right now?
I think some of it has to do with the injury. His knee has just not been right since the beginning of the year. And he was back not practicing again today. So I don't know what's going on there, if that's something he's going to need to have repaired after the season or what, but they can't seem to keep him on the field. I believe LaFleur said on Thursday that they were trying to get him on the field, but they lost him. And so that's really a big part of it. And then he's rusty and his confidence is waning a little because he hasn't played all that much. So it's kind of just been, it's just been a spiral for him. He can't seem to get out of it.
Thanks, Marcel, for your question. I don't know how early or late it is wherever you are, but hopefully you are well rested and not up in the middle of the night chatting with us, although we appreciate it regardless. Let's go over to Facebook. Levi has a question for us. Levi wants to know, is offensive lineman and 2020 draft pick Jon Runyan a future starter at guard? Due to injury, because Bakhtiari has been out, Billy Turner has been out, Rick Wagner has been out, Jon Runyan has had some experience getting some significant snaps at guard because the offensive line has had to shift around a little bit this season. How likely is it that the Packers see him as a starter in the future?
Yeah, I think they do. I think he could be a starter next season. I think if Corey Linsley leaves and it's, the way he's playing, it's looking more and more like it's going to be impossible to re-sign him, then they may have to move Elton Jenkins to center or Lucas Patrick to center, and Runyan will have to start at guard. I don't think that's a bad thing. I think Runyan has some ability. The times he's played, he's been pretty solid. It's not like he's been a swinging gate when he went in there, which is really your fear when you bring in a rookie who hasn't played and didn't have a preseason really, barely had an off season. He hangs in there. He's pretty much a tough guy. So I think he could be a starter by next year.
Thank you, Levi, for your question. Let's take a question here from Joey. Joey wants to know, when inside linebacker Christian Kirksey returns from IR, what role should he expect now that inside linebackers Kamal Martin and Chris Barnes have shown what they can do? Chris Barnes is still on COVID-19 reserve. We do not know if he will be healthy enough to play or available to play on Sunday against the Jaguars. Martin was a close contact of running back A.J. Dillon when he was placed on COVID-19 reserve. Martin has since come off of COVID-19 reserve and will be available on Sunday. Kirksey is still on IR, however, he could come off before this weekend's game. What is his role going to look like when he does return?
So I would guess that Barnes won't be ready on Sunday. Excuse me. It usually takes about 10 days if you've tested positive to get back. So I think when Christian Kirksey comes back, he's the starting inside linebacker. He's the starting Mike. And Kamal Martin is the weak side linebacker next to him. And that's the way they'll roll the rest of the season, as long as both stay healthy. Chris Barnes has given them a lot and can help in some situations, but Christian Kirksey is too experienced. He's not going to make some of the mistakes that Chris Barnes has made as much as he's given them for a rookie, and he's given them a lot. Christian Kirksey knows how to play that position inside and out, and he's going to be better there. And then they're going to have a more physical player in Kamal Martin. I think when the two of them are on the field together, they'll complement each other a little better. So, yeah, they need Kirksey back, and I think as soon as he's healthy, he starts.
Let's continue our conversation on the defense. Edison over on YouTube has a question. Edison wants to know, has cornerback Josh Jackson shown enough to be considered a starter next year? Will his contract be up after next year? Next year. And does this mean that the Packers must draft a corner high in 2021? Josh Jackson becomes a free agent in 2022, so he does have another year on his contract after this year, which has implications with cornerback Kevin King. King becomes a free agent in 2021. The Packers must decide whether or not they want to extend him. How has Jackson's recent play and King's recent injury impacted King's future with the Packers?
Well, the King injury has actually worked in their favor. They're not going to extend him. They will not extend him. But, unless they get some kind of really great deal, which, why wouldn't his agent and him want to go test the market just to see if there's someone out there who might take a bite? But his injury history is going to scare off a lot of teams. And so, he may wind up coming back on a one-year contract, a one-year prove-it contract. And boy, they would love for that to happen. He may miss some games, but when he's on the field, he's pretty good. So I would suspect that there's a chance he'll be back. As for Josh Jackson, he's made a lot of improvement, but he's got to get over committing penalties. He's got to get more confident that he can make these plays without grabbing onto guys. And he's just a penalty machine right now, and he's got to get over that somehow. I don't know if he'll be a starter next year, but I think he could be in the rotation just like he is now.
Thank you, Edison, for your thoughtful question. We appreciate it. Let's take a question here from Jason. Jason would like to know if there is any news on defensive coordinator Mike Pettine and his status moving forward as defensive coordinator. We could have a Dom Capers, former defensive coordinator, repeat with Pettine. I know some of you out there are a little bit frustrated with Mike Pettine. It's been a tough few games for the defense. They've shown some gradual improvement in certain areas over the last few games. The run defense has continued to struggle a little bit. However, they were pretty stout against the San Francisco 49ers, and I suppose their B team of JaMychal Hasty and Jerick McKinnon. However, at what point does Mike Pettine's job become on the hot seat?
Well, I think that's for the end of the season. At this point, I don't think it's going to happen. I think if any change would have been made, it probably would have been halfway through the season or at the bye week or whatever. They're gonna ride this through. I think changing now, I don't know what they could accomplish. I don't think they can play a new defense. They've trained this to play this defense. And while they could tweak a few things, they probably would still have to use a lot of the same scheme. I just don't think you can change 9 weeks into the season. So don't count on it happening. Now, at the end of the year, LaFleur has to make a decision, and he will based on how they finish the year out.
Let's take some questions. I've got a few different questions. We've got Stanford here asking about, will the Packers pick up a defensive end on the waiver wire? Jason, our friend here on Facebook, also says that he's still in his feelings after the front office didn't decide they decided not to pick up an offensive weapon before the trade deadline. How desperately did the Packers need to add to either their defensive front or their wide receiving core before the trade deadline? And how concerned should Packers fans be that they didn't do either of those things?
Well, we've been through this a number of times, and I'll stick with my feelings here, which is that Will Fuller was a good player. He is a good player. He had a 100-yard receiving game this past week against Jacksonville, of course. But the second-round pick was too high for a guy that you're going to be potentially renting for 2 months. And I'm sure Brian Gutekunst feels like when they get Lazard back that they have enough with him, Devontae Adams, Aaron Jones, Jamal Williams, Robert Tonyan. I mean, just those are your key guys within the offense. And you throw in then a little bit of Tyler Ervin. I think what they need to be is that team they were against Minnesota and really a team against San Francisco, where pretty much everybody is contributing. And some weeks, there will be Devontae Adams catching 14 balls, and some weeks, Alan Lazard might catch a 73-yarder and a 50-yarder like he did against New Orleans. They're going to have to roll with that. And I think they feel like they have enough to be a pretty good offense. They've been a pretty good offense considering they've only had all their offensive guys together for one full game, and that was the opener against Minnesota.
Listen, we've got a question here from, it's making me laugh. Andrew says the Packers just need 2 more Kenny Clarks, and then the defensive line will be fine. I unfortunately don't have a cloning machine for you to lend to the Packers, or I suppose nobody does, to lend to the Packers to clone Kenny Clark. However, since Kenny Clark returned from his groin injury, he's been active for the last 4 games. He's been pretty quiet. No sacks, no pressures on the quarterback. What's going on with Clark?
Well, I know Jerry Montgomery defended him today his position coach, saying that if you really dig into the tape, he's really taking on double teams and opening up stuff for other guys. And to some degree, that's true. I've also seen some instances where I've been really shocked at how far backwards he's been blocked. But I really think that he's still coming back from that groin injury. What I see is there's times when just planting and holding his ground against these double team blocks, he's not always as consistent, because I don't know if the groin is just, he's still coming back from it and building strength on it, but he is still really quick off the ball, and you see him in the backfield. The problem is that they don't have guys who are finishing. So Kenny Clark, if he's going to work a double team or if he's going to split a double team, there's got to be someone behind him who's coming in there and making a play. And I think that's a little bit where they miss Kirksey, and it's definitely where they miss Kamal Martin. They need a physical presence to work off some of those double teams. And that's going to be the name of the game. Teams are going to double team Kenny Clark because, that's their number one target, even more than Zadarius Smith. They're going to want to stop him in the middle, and that's life at nose tackle.
Kamal Martin will be making his return this upcoming weekend, and Chris Barnes will most likely, he may not, as he's still on COVID IR. However, Christian Kirksey could likely come off of injured reserve this upcoming week to help Kenny Clark with some of those double teams. Thank you, Andrew, for your very fun statement. And thank all of you so much for joining us today. We appreciate all of your thoughtful questions. We will be live once again tomorrow, so if you did not get your question answered, don't worry about it. Come back and we will chat with you once again. For Tom Silverstein, I am Olivia Reiner. We'll see you next time.